Chapter 1. The perfect system. There's a certain peace in perfection. Specifically, the kind that exists right before someone ruins it. My office is silent. Not the natural kind of silence, the expensive kind. The hum of the air conditioner. The faint tick of a Swiss clock worth more than most people's salaries. The precise clack of my Mont Blanc pen against the glass desk. Everything calibrated, controlled, predictable. Then the door opens. Predictably, someone ruins it. Sir. About the quarterly expense report. I don't even look up. I said noon. It's 10:43. The intern stammers. I don't know his name, they rotate too often. He mutters something about a printing issue. Of course, it's always the printer's fault. Never the fact that the world is full of people allergic to responsibility. Out. I say, voice calm, sharp. He vanishes like smoke. The glass walls reflect my own expression. Neat, symmetrical, unreadable. I inherited this office from my father along with his empire and, apparently, his habit of surrounding himself with idiots. They call me strict. I call it efficient. If a person can't survive my tone, how can they survive the market? At precisely 11, the department files in for the weekly review. I like punctuality. It gives me the illusion that competence still exists. They shuffle papers, avoid eye contact. I let them stew for a full 10 seconds before speaking. Fear is a better motivator than caffeine. Let's begin. Who can explain why our logistics expenses rose 12% this quarter? Ask. Silence. My favorite sound. Finally, a soft voice speaks up. Sir. The supplier increased rates after. Ah yes, him. Haru Minami. The polite one. The one who bows too low, apologizes too fast, and never looks me in the eye. I've noticed him, not because he's remarkable, but because he's consistent. Always present, always quiet. He looks tired, but everyone looks tired in my meetings. The supplier increased rates after we delayed last month's payment. He repeats. I tilt my head slightly. Delayed? Who authorized that? Accounting had an issue. So you're telling me that a single hiccup from a team you don't even belong to was enough to derail an entire department's budget? I interrupt. He hesitates. Rookie mistake. Never hesitate in front of a predator. Pathetic. Next time, take responsibility instead of excuses. Leadership starts with ownership. I say. There's a small, collective exhale around the room, the kind people make when someone else takes the hit. Haru bows. Understood, sir. No argument. No glare. No tearful excuse. Just a quiet acknowledgement. It's almost annoying. The meeting continues. I rip through slides, slash through reports, dismantle people's pride one miscalculation at a time. Numbers bend. People break. Efficiency restored. By noon, the conference room is empty again. I return to my desk, loosen my tie, and savor the stillness. That's when I notice the faint smudge on one of the printed charts left behind, coffee. Just a ring, faint but visible. I press my thumb over it. The stain bothers me more than it should. Minami, I say through the intercom. A pause. Then, yes, sir. Report back to my office. He appears 5 minutes later, holding a stack of corrected spreadsheets. His shirt is slightly wrinkled. His tie's too short. There's a small ink stain on his wrist. All visual evidence of someone who works too hard for too little. He places the files on my desk. I fixed the errors, sir. I skim them. They're spotless. Precise. Almost good. You work fast, I say. He smiles faintly. I've had practice. From making mistakes? From fixing other people's. For the first time all morning, I look up. There's no sarcasm in his tone, just honesty. It's disarming. He realizes his slip, bows again. Apologies, sir. I should fire him, or at least remind him of his place. But instead, I just gesture for him to leave. When the door shuts, the silence feels heavier than before. I glance again at that faint coffee ring. The imperfection irritates me, but when I reach for a napkin to wipe it off, I stop halfway. Instead, I just stare at it, small, circular, unimportant, and realize, for reasons I can't explain, It's the only thing in this office that looks human. Chapter 2. Cracks in the glass. There's something about incompetence that ruins a morning faster than bad coffee. And today, my morning was already halfway ruined before the caffeine even hit. The espresso machine in the executive lounge sputtered like it was dying. I pressed the button again. Nothing. Perfect. Even technology was joining the rebellion. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Of course, a multimillion-dollar corporation, yet somehow we can't make espresso. I muttered, "Good morning, sir." I turned to find Haru Minami standing in the doorway with 2 files in hand, smiling that polite, neutral smile he always wore. The kind of expression that suggested he was simultaneously alive and not really present. "Your schedule for today and the revised supplier contracts," he said, stepping closer. I took them, skimming through without acknowledgement. "And the quarterly forecast presentation?" He hesitated. "Still with the analytics team. I can remind them to—" "Don't remind them. Replace them," I said sharply. He blinked. "Replace all of them?" "Yes. If they can't deliver results on time, they can deliver their resignation instead," I said. He didn't flinch. Most people do when I talk like that. But he just nodded, calm. "Understood, sir." It irritated me. That calm. That lack of visible reaction. I poured the half-brewed espresso into my cup anyway. Tasted like regret. By 10 o'clock, the office was in chaos. Apparently, my "replace them" comment had spread through the grapevine, and the analytics department was now collectively panicking. I could practically hear the whispering from my office. Fear was efficient, but panic was not. I called the department head. "Fix your team before I fix it for you," I said, then hung up before she could respond. When I looked up, Haru was standing outside my glass wall again, holding another folder. I gestured for him to enter. "Sir, there's an issue with the client report formatting. Then fix it." I did, but the manager didn't like that I changed the layout, he said. "Then he's wrong," I said. Haru blinked, surprised. "Pardon?" I said he's wrong. If your revision improves readability and precision, you're right. Don't seek permission for competence. I repeated. He smiled slightly. "That's reassuring to hear, sir." I frowned. I hadn't meant to reassure him. I'd meant to make a point. Somehow it sounded like a compliment. "Don't get used to it," I said. Later that afternoon, I caught Haru in the break room. He was pouring coffee, if you could call that dark sludge coffee, into a paper cup. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing faint bruises on his forearms, the kind you get from carrying too much weight or not sleeping enough. "Why are you drinking that?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked up, startled. "Oh, Mr. Rio. Sir. I can't really afford the executive machine coffee, so I just used the communal one." I frowned. "The communal one tastes like burnt cardboard." He laughed softly. "I've noticed." That laugh, quiet, self-deprecating, too gentle for this world, lodged itself somewhere I didn't appreciate. "Get a card for the executive lounge," I said, waving a hand dismissively. "Tell HR I authorized it." He blinked. "Sir, that's really unnecessary. I'm fine with this." "No, you're not. You're just used to being fine," I said. The words came out sharper than intended. I didn't like how personal they sounded. So I added, colder, "I don't want underperforming staff collapsing from caffeine deficiency." He smiled again, smaller this time, but real. "Understood, sir. I'll try not to collapse." That evening, as the last of the daylight turned my office glass gold, I checked the updated reports. Everything was in order. Profits stable. Projects on track. And yet, my mind kept replaying the image of Haru stirring instant coffee like it was a luxury. Why did it bother me? Maybe because it was inefficient. Or maybe because, for a moment, I'd seen something unfamiliar in him. Something I couldn't quantify with data. It wasn't weakness. It was persistence. The kind of persistence you don't learn from privilege. The kind you earn by surviving. I shut my laptop, annoyed at myself. I didn't need distractions, especially ones that smiled at bad coffee like it was enough. When I left the building, Haru was still there, packing papers at his desk. Still working? I asked, pausing. He looked up, startled again. Just finishing a few things. It's fine. You're not paid for overtime. I know, but I'm paid to do my job right, he said simply. I didn't respond, just nodded once and walked away. But later, sitting in the back of my car, I caught myself thinking, if he keeps working like that, he'll burn out. And for reasons I can't explain, the thought bothered me more than it should. Chapter 3. Reality has terrible lighting. There are two kinds of people in the world, those who plan and those who survive. Until recently, I thought the latter were just bad at planning. I was wrong. It started with something small. Haru didn't come in that morning. No message, no call, just absence, an unacceptable one. By 9, my irritation was measurable. By 10, it was personal. I hated disruptions to the system, and Haru Minami apparently was now part of it. At 11, I told my secretary, "Find out where he is." She blinked, confused. "Sir? Mr. Minami? Should I?" "Yes. Do I look like I'm asking about his vacation plans?" I snapped. 10 minutes later, she returned. "Sir," he called in. He said there's a family emergency. His brother is in the hospital. I froze mid-keystroke. Brother. Hospital. The words didn't belong in my office vocabulary. I nodded once, waved her away, and tried to focus on the balance sheets in front of me. Numbers usually calm me. They're obedient, consistent, loyal. But today they blurred into meaningless shapes. At noon, I told my driver to cancel lunch. Then, without fully understanding why, I told him to drive to Kiyomizu General Hospital. Hospitals are horrible places. Too bright, too clean, too full of quiet misery. I walked in, suit perfectly pressed, shoes echoing against tile, feeling like an intruder in someone else's suffering. The receptionist glanced up nervously. Can I help you, sir?" "I'm looking for Haru Minami." She pointed toward the east wing. "Room 203, sir." When I found it, the door was half open. Inside, Haru sat in a plastic chair beside a hospital bed, his hands clasped together, head bowed. The boy in the bed, younger, pale, thin, had oxygen tubes and dark circles under his eyes. I should have left. This wasn't my world. But I didn't. "Haru," I said, voice quieter than I expected. He looked up, startled. "Mr. Rio? What are you doing here?" His tone was half shock, half panic. "I could ask you the same." He stood quickly, almost knocking his chair over. I'm sorry for not calling earlier. I didn't mean to." "Stop. I'm not here to reprimand you," I said. He blinked, confused. "You're not." I glanced at his brother. "He's your brother?" Haru nodded. "Yeah, he's been sick for a while. The medicine helps, but it's expensive." His voice cracked slightly at the end, but he smiled anyway, that same infuriatingly calm smile. I looked around the room. It was small, crowded with cheap flowers, vending machine snacks, and a single worn-out blanket folded neatly at the edge of the bed. For the first time, I understood the word tight. Not in the financial sense, but in the way air feels when guilt presses against your ribs. "Why didn't you tell HR?" I asked. He laughed softly. "And say what? That I'm broke? That my brother's hospital bills are drowning us?" He shook his head. "No one cares about that stuff, sir. People have their own problems." I didn't respond. Couldn't. He turned back to his brother, adjusting the blanket gently. His movements were automatic, practiced, careful. I recognized that kind of discipline. It was survival wearing manners like armor. Cleared my throat. "You should have called in sooner. You're no good to anyone if you collapse." He smiled again. Faint, tired, but genuine. "I'll try to remember that." Something inside me bristled. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it, like exhaustion was normal. Like that's just what life was. I hated it. I hated that I suddenly cared. Back in the car, I stared out the window at the gray city skyline. For years, I'd measured success by the absence of struggle. The less you suffered, the better you were. But that kid, sitting beside his dying brother, smiling anyway, that wasn't absence of struggle. That was endurance. I'd built my empire on control. People like Haru lived in chaos. Yet somehow he still showed up every day, polite, focused, steady, while I lost patience over an espresso machine. It was disgusting and humbling. I hated that too. When I reached home, I didn't pour whiskey or check the stock exchange like usual. I just sat in the dark for a while, staring at the untouched glass of water on my desk. Somewhere between the silence and the hum of the city, I muttered, "You're a fool, Rio." But a small, traitorous voice in the back of my mind whispered, "At least he's a good one." Chapter 4. The Man Who Smiled Through Ruin. The first thing I noticed when Haru returned to work wasn't that he was late. It was that he was pale. The second thing I noticed was that he was still smiling. He walked into the office at exactly 9:05, clutching a stack of reports like they were life rafts. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie slightly askew, and yet, he still had the audacity to greet everyone like the world hadn't just punched him in the ribs. "Morning," he said softly as he passed my glass office. I pretended not to hear. He bowed slightly anyway, then went straight to his desk and started typing. By 10 o'clock, the rest of the department was buzzing. I could hear the low hum of conversation through the glass. Whispers about his brother, about hospital bills, about how amazing it was that he came back so soon. Amazing. That's what they called it. I called it stupidity. I opened my door. The chatter froze instantly. "Minami," I said, my tone slicing through the room. He jumped slightly and turned toward me. "Yes, sir." "My office." He followed me in, closing the door quietly behind him. His hands fidgeted at his sides. The way he stood, straight-backed, respectful, cautious, reminded me of a soldier waiting for orders. I gestured toward the chair. "Sit." He hesitated. "I'm fine standing, sir." "I wasn't asking." He sat. "Explain to me why you're back at work when you're clearly not ready." I began. He blinked, then gave that maddeningly polite smile again. "Because work doesn't stop for anyone, sir." "That's a terrible answer." "It's the truth, my brother's stable. The bills aren't," he said. The calm way he said it made something in my chest tighten. Not pity, something colder. Anger, maybe, but not at him. "You realize you won't help him by working yourself into the ground." "I'll help him by keeping my job. I can't afford rest," he said, voice firm now. There it was again, that quiet, stubborn strength I couldn't stand. Or maybe I couldn't understand. "Your metrics have been slipping," I said, half lie, half warning. "I'll fix them, you won't need to worry about me," he said. I leaned back in my chair. I wasn't worried, just making sure inefficiency isn't contagious. His lips twitched, almost a smirk. "Then I'll get vaccinated, sir." My brow rose. Did he just joke? I dismissed him with a flick of my hand. But when he left, I found myself staring at the door long after it closed. By noon, I'd reviewed his latest reports. Every one of them was flawless. Not good. Not acceptable. Flawless. No errors, no wasted phrasing, no signs of fatigue. And yet I knew he'd written them at 2 in the morning beside a hospital bed. Something about that irritated me more than any mistake could. People weren't supposed to function under pressure like that. They were supposed to crack, shatter, beg for leniency. But Haru Minami just kept showing up, smiling like the world hadn't broken him yet. That evening, I found myself walking through the lower floors on my way out. Something I never did. Executives used the private elevator. But I wanted to see it. The mess, the noise, the real part of the company. The lights flickered slightly. The air smelled faintly of coffee and exhaustion. And there he was, still at his desk, the last one left. He was leaning forward, chin resting on one hand, typing with the other. His eyes were half-lidded but focused. A small desk lamp cast warm light across his face. He looked tired, yes, but also calm, almost content. I don't know how long I stood there, watching. Long enough for him to notice. "Sir, you're still here," he said, startled. I cleared my throat, caught off guard by being caught off guard. "So are you." He smiled sheepishly. Just finishing up the report. I'll be gone soon. I stepped closer, glancing at the half-empty cup of instant coffee on his desk. How long since you last slept? He tilted his head, pretending to think. Technically, yesterday. Practically, I don't remember. That's not something to brag about. It's something to get used to. He said it so easily, as if exhaustion was just another daily task. Go home, that's an order. I said finally. He hesitated. I still need to send the files to accounting. I'll fire you if you don't leave. He blinked, clearly unsure if I was serious. I was, mostly. He packed his things quietly, bowed slightly. Thank you, sir. I watched him disappear into the elevator. For once, I didn't feel superior watching someone leave before me. I felt unsettled. Later that night, back in my penthouse, I poured a drink and stared at the city lights. People like me lived above the skyline glass chrome distance. We looked down on the rest of the world and called it perspective. But tonight, the view didn't feel like power. Felt lonely. Somewhere down there, Haru was probably asleep on a bus or beside a hospital bed, ready to wake up tomorrow and do it all again. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, his life, for all its mess and misery, had more meaning than mine. Chapter 5. The manager who didn't care, lied about it. I've made a terrible mistake. Cared. Not openly, of course. Not in a way anyone could point at and say, Rio Cullen has feelings. God forbid. But ever since that night when Haru looked like he was held together by caffeine and blind faith, I've been noticing things, like how he smiles at the copier when it jams. Who smiles at a copier? Or how he apologizes to the vending machine when it eats his coins. He's the sort of man who says sorry to inanimate objects. I don't understand him. I've run companies larger than most cities, and this one employee, this polite disaster of a man, has somehow invaded my thoughts more effectively than any corporate rival ever did. This morning, I decided to reassert control. I walked into the office early, as always. Haru was already there. Again. He was wiping down the communal desk area, sleeves rolled up, humming off key. Minami, I said sharply. He jumped slightly, turned, and smiled. Always that smile. Good morning, sir. What are you doing? Cleaning. That's not your job. Neither is drinking 6 coffees before noon, sir. And yet here we are. I blinked. Excuse me? He coughed lightly, as if realizing he'd just spoken to his own executioner. I mean, keeping the workplace neat helps productivity. I stared. You're terrible at lying. Yes, sir, he said cheerfully. I should have been irritated. I was technically, but a corner of my mouth twitched before I stopped it. Minami, if you have enough energy to scrub desks, you have enough to handle the new logistics proposal. I said, recovering. His eyes widened slightly. The one for the regional expansion? That's way above my level, sir. Then climb. By noon, I regretted everything. Because Haru actually did the damn thing. And not just adequately, brilliantly. The man had mapped out the entire proposal in under 3 hours, complete with projections, risk analysis, and budget restructuring that even our finance director would have bowed to. I stared at the file on my screen. It was irritating. Unsettling, and though I'll never say it aloud, impressive. When I called him in, he looked nervous but not afraid. I liked that balance. Fear meant weakness. Nerves meant he cared. Who helped you with this? I asked. No one, sir. You expect me to believe you drafted an executive-level report on your own? I didn't sleep much last night. I figured I might as well use the time, he admitted. Of course he didn't sleep. That was becoming his brand. I tapped my pen against the desk. You realize you've just made your team look incompetent. He blinked. Oh, I didn't mean to. Intentions are irrelevant. Results are what matter. He nodded, that calm obedience settling back over him. Understood, sir. Something about him irritated me again. The way he accepted everything without complaint. Like he'd already learned that the world doesn't give second chances. I leaned forward. Tell me something, Minami. Don't you ever get tired of pretending everything's fine? He looked genuinely confused. It's not pretending. It's hope, maybe. Hope. As if that word belonged in a place like this. Later that evening, I caught myself watching him leave. His bag looked too heavy for someone his size. His shoulders slumped slightly the moment he thought no one could see. For some reason, I followed. Not directly, just far enough to observe. He took the bus again. Not the company car service, not a taxi, just a crowded, noisy, slow bus. He stood the whole way, gripping the overhead rail with tired hands. And yet, when a woman with a stroller got on, he gave up his spot with a smile. It was absurd, completely illogical, but also strangely human. I watched him step off 2 stops later, heading into a small, dimly lit convenience store. He came out with instant noodles and a box of cheap coffee packets. For someone so poor, he still chose coffee. I almost laughed. When I got home that night, the penthouse felt emptier than usual. Everything was in its place, immaculate, sterile, lifeless. I poured myself a drink, sat on the leather sofa, and stared at the skyline again. Same view, same silence. And for the first time, I wondered what it would feel like to live like Haru. Cramped apartment, heavy bag, no chauffeur. Would the air taste different when you worked for every breath? Would sleep feel better when you'd actually earned it? I shook the thought away immediately. Sentimentality was poison. But even as I turned off the lights, one image lingered in my mind. Haru, half asleep on that bus, still smiling. The next morning, I made a decision. If he was going to keep pushing himself until he broke, then fine, I'd be the one to control the damage. Not because I cared. Of course not. It was just bad optics if a promising employee collapsed on company time. At least, that's what I told myself as I drafted an email. Minami, from now on, report directly to me. Control. That's all this was. Just control. Right? Chapter 6. The Bus Boy and the Boss. When I said Haru should report directly to me, I didn't mean I wanted to see him every day. I meant once a week, maybe twice. A controlled dosage like bitter medicine. Instead, he's been in my office every morning since. He walks in, bows slightly and says, "Good morning, sir." Like we're trapped in some drama about a kind-hearted intern and a brooding billionaire. I half expect background music to start playing. "Minami, you don't have to greet me personally every day," I said on Monday. He smiled. "You said to report directly to you, sir." "Yes, for work. This is work." I blinked at him. How is saying good morning work? It boosts morale. Whose? Yours, hopefully. I had no words. The audacity of this man, offering me morale. By Wednesday, I'd accepted that he was impossible to manage. He worked too hard, apologized too easily, and smiled at everyone like he hadn't been chewed up by life and spat out a dozen times already. Today, though, I saw something different. He came in late. 10 minutes. No smile. "Minami, you're late," I said, tone sharp. He froze, bowing quickly. "I'm sorry, sir. The bus." "The bus? We have company cars." I repeated. "I can't afford those, sir." I blinked. "You can't afford to use the company car?" He looked embarrassed. "You have to book it in advance. And there's a fee." A fee. I hadn't even known that. I'd never needed to check. I stared at him, really stared, for a moment too long. His hair was a mess from the wind, tie slightly crooked. He looked like someone who'd sprinted through the city just to avoid disappointing me. "Next time, call my assistant. You'll be picked up," I said finally. He looked horrified. "Sir, that's not necessary. It wasn't a request." He opened his mouth again, probably to argue, but I cut him off. "Minami, if you're going to work for me, you'll arrive on time. I don't care how." He nodded, biting his lip. "Understood, sir." He should have ended there. But something in his expression, some mix of exhaustion and gratitude, followed me the entire day. At lunch, I saw him again, sitting alone at the edge of the cafeteria. He was stirring what looked like instant ramen in a paper cup. The staff table next to him was filled with noise, laughter, gossip, but he stayed quiet, eyes on his soup like it was the only thing anchoring him to the world. I don't know what possessed me, but I sat down across from him. The room fell silent for a second. You could have heard a pin drop. "Sir," he said, startled. "Is this seat taken?" He blinked. "It's the cafeteria, sir. Seats are open." "Good." I placed my tray down. I'd never actually used the cafeteria before. The food looked like it was cooked by accountants, not chefs. He fidgeted with his chopsticks. "You don't have to, sit here, sir." "I'm aware," I said dryly. "Right?" Silence. "Then," he said quietly, "you don't have to force yourself to talk to me just because I work for you." I looked up. "I don't do anything I don't want to, Minami." He smiled faintly. "That sounds nice." For some reason, that answer didn't feel like a victory. Later that evening, we had a board review. Haru stood beside me, assisting with data visuals. The directors, predictably, underestimated him. Polite, soft-spoken, a bit awkward, until he spoke. When the CFO questioned one of my projections, Haru stepped in with quiet authority. "With respect, sir, if we lower the regional target by that margin, we'll lose long-term retention and erode brand trust. The current ratio, though risky, maintains competitive appeal." He said. Every head turned. He sounded calm, certain. For a moment, I forgot he wasn't one of us. Forgot he wasn't me. After the meeting, I caught up to him in the hallway. "Minami," I said. He turned, smiling nervously. "Was I too forward?" "Yes, it was impressive," I said. He blinked. "Thank you, sir." I glanced at him, at how the fluorescent light softened his tired face, and said something I never thought I'd hear from myself. "You should take the rest of the day off." His smile faded slightly. "I can't. I need the overtime pay." I exhaled slowly. Of course he did. Another reminder that we lived in different worlds. That night, I found myself walking instead of calling for my driver. I took the long route home, through the same streets he probably crossed every day. The noise, the smell, the chaos. It was raw, unfiltered, real. I stopped outside a convenience store. Through the window, a boy about Haru's age was laughing with the cashier over spilled snacks. That kind of laughter doesn't happen in boardrooms. And suddenly, I understood something. Haru wasn't naive. He wasn't blind to cruelty. He just learned how to live with it. How to find small kindnesses where the rest of us saw nothing but cost and outcome. I envied that, deeply. When I reached my penthouse, silence greeted me again. I loosened my tie, staring at the city through the glass. Maybe Haru was still working, probably eating cup noodles, probably humming off-key again. I poured myself a drink. For once, it didn't taste like success. It just tasted lonely. Chapter 7. The argument that shouldn't have happened. If there's one thing I hate more than incompetence, it's caring about someone else's well-being. Unfortunately, that's exactly what I seem to be doing lately. I've spent the past week watching Haru crumble in real time. Dark circles deep enough to qualify as financial losses, hands trembling slightly when he types, a faint limp in his walk that he pretends doesn't exist. And the worst part? He still smiles at everyone. He could be bleeding out in the break room and he'd apologize for the inconvenience. I tried ignoring it. Really, I did. But today something snapped. He was in my office again, going over reports. His concentration was razor sharp, but his skin looked pale. When he reached for his coffee cup, his hand shook so badly he nearly spilled it. "Minami," I said sharply. He looked up, startled. "Yes, sir? When was the last time you slept?" He hesitated. "A few hours ago." "How many hours?" He blinked, calculating. "1. I set my pen down, deliberately slow. "Are you trying to die in my office? Because if you are, I'd prefer you do it after finishing the Q3 analysis." He smiled weakly. "I'll try, sir." I stood. "That wasn't a joke." "I know." "Then stop treating it like one. You're an employee, not a machine. Take a day off." I snapped. He frowned. "I can't. If I miss a day, I fall behind. Rent's due. My brother's." He stopped himself. Something ugly twisted in my chest. "And yet you still come here half dead?" He met my eyes. "What choice do I have, sir?" That question hit harder than it should have. What choice, indeed? I didn't know what to say, so I defaulted to what I do best: control. You're still taking the day off, I said. Sir, that's an order. His jaw tightened. You can't just. I can. You forget who you're talking to. I interrupted, stepping closer. He glared at me then, really glared, and it was new. I never forget, but sometimes I wish you'd remember I'm capable of my own choices too, he said quietly. The words hit me like a slap. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. No one talked to me like that. No one dared. Minami, you're dangerously close to insubordination, I said, voice low. He took a shaky breath. Maybe, but I'm tired, sir. Not just physically. I'm tired of feeling like effort only matters if it looks perfect. And just like that, for the first time in my life, I didn't have a comeback. He looked away, muttering, sorry, that was out of line. He turned to leave, but I caught his wrist. His skin was warm, too warm, and thin under my grip. You're burning up, I said. It's nothing. You have a fever. I said it's fine. It's not fine. The words came out louder than intended, echoing through the room. He flinched slightly, and I exhaled, lowering my tone. Minami, you can't keep doing this. His voice softened. You don't need to care, sir. I'm replaceable. Don't say that. I snapped again. His eyes widened at the edge in my tone. There it was, the truth I'd been ignoring crashing through the dam I'd built around it. I wasn't angry because he was weak. I was angry because he wasn't, because he kept standing, smiling, working, and breaking all the unspoken rules of survival I'd built my life around. I'd spent years believing strength meant distance. He made me question that. He pulled his hand back slowly. I'll go rest. Take tomorrow off too, I said. He hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. After he left, my office felt unnaturally quiet. The faint smell of coffee lingered where he'd stood, cheap, instant, stubbornly comforting. I sank into my chair and stared at the window. The skyline glared back, sharp, sterile, expensive. Somewhere out there, Haru was probably trudging home through the rain. Maybe stopping by that same convenience store. Probably smiling at a cashier who didn't know he was breaking inside. And I, Ryo Cullen, the man who'd once believed emotions were inefficiency, couldn't stop worrying about him. I hated it. I hated him for making me feel it. But I knew, deep down, I'd do it all over again tomorrow. The next morning, I sent an order to HR myself. Employee Minami Haru is to be granted paid leave. Effective immediately. No deductions. When my assistant raised an eyebrow, I said coldly, company image. We take care of our people. A lie, or maybe the first truth I'd ever said. Chapter 8. The office feels too quiet without you. For the record, I didn't miss him. The office just felt quieter. That's all. Less chaotic. Less noisy. Less, fine. I missed him. A little. When I walked in Monday morning, there was no polite good morning, sir. No off-key humming, no clatter of coffee cups. Just the sterile hum of air conditioning and the sound of my own thoughts, which, frankly, are the worst company I could keep. I told myself it was peaceful, productive even. By noon, I was checking my inbox to see if he'd emailed. By 2, I was glaring at the HR department for daring to enforce the paid leave I had ordered. Sir, you're staring at Minami's empty desk again. My assistant said carefully, I'm not. You've been doing it for 10 minutes. I was thinking. About the empty desk? About productivity metrics. She nodded like one might nod at a dangerous animal pretending to be tame. Of course, sir. On the 3rd day, I cracked. I called him. The phone rang 5 times before he picked up. Hello. His voice was hoarse but calm. Minami. Sir. There was a pause. I suddenly realized I hadn't planned what to say. You're alive. He laughed softly. Yes, sir. I am. Good. When are you coming back? Silence stretched. He hesitated. The doctor said to rest a few more days. I'll have him fired. He chuckled again. Tired but genuine. That's not necessary. Your absence has affected workflow. Really? No. But it might eventually. He smiled audibly through the phone. I'll be back soon, sir. I hung up before I could say something stupid like I hope so. He returned 2 days later. When I saw him walk into the office, I didn't react. At least not externally. Internally, it was like someone had turned the lights back on. He looked better. Still pale but steady. Smiling again. "Good morning, sir," he said, bowing slightly. "You're late." He blinked. "It's 8:55. I said late, not wrong." He laughed quietly. "I missed this." I froze. "Missed what?" "Your personality." "My what?" "Never mind," he said quickly, grin widening. Unbelievable. The man nearly dies of exhaustion, comes back, and immediately resumes testing my patience. Later that day, I caught him reorganizing my files. Unasked, obviously. "Minami, touch that folder again and I'll fire you," I said. He looked up, unbothered. "You said that last time too." "And I meant it." He smiled. "Then you'll have to fire me often." I stared at him. He smiled back too innocently. It was infuriating. Also strangely grounding. Before I could respond, my assistant came in holding a stack of reports. "Sir, we need a presentation draft for tomorrow's investor meeting." "Give it to Minami," I said without thinking. Haru blinked. "Sir, that's advanced? Complicated?" "Yes." "You'll manage." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll try." "Don't try. Do it." "Yes, sir." As he walked out, I realized something important. I trusted him. Not because he was the best, but because he cared the most. That night, I stayed late at the office. Purely to review quarterly numbers, of course. Definitely not to check if he needed help. He was still there, typing furiously, hair slightly disheveled, brow furrowed in concentration. "Minami, why are you still here?" I said from the doorway. He startled slightly. "You're still here too, sir. I'm the boss. And I'm the employee trying to meet the boss's impossible expectations." I raised a brow. "So you're blaming me for your overachievement?" He smiled. "Maybe a little." For a moment, silence stretched between us. Not awkward, just present. "Coffee?" I asked suddenly. He blinked. "You're offering to make coffee?" I scowled. "Don't be absurd. I'll order it." He laughed. Quietly, warmly, and something in my chest loosened. When the delivery arrived, we sat in my office, drinking in silence. "Sir, thank you," he said after a while. "For what?" "For the leave. And for caring. Even if you'll never admit it." I set my cup down. "You're overestimating me, Minami." He smiled faintly. "No, I think I'm finally seeing you." I looked at him and for a second, I forgot the difference in our titles, our worlds, our everything. Then I stood abruptly. "Meeting's over. Go home." He laughed softly as he left. "Good night, sir." When the door shut, I sat back and exhaled. My pulse was too fast for something as trivial as coffee. This was a problem. A big one. Because for the first time in years, I wanted someone to stay. Chapter 9. Rumors and red faces. Gossip spreads faster than market crashes. By Tuesday morning, half the office apparently believed I was having an affair with my assistant, which was impressive, really, considering I'd only shared coffee with him once. That's all it takes, apparently, 1 cup and a few too many glances. "Sir, there are rumors," my secretary said cautiously, closing my office door behind her. "Rumors." I didn't even look up from the report. "Yes, about you and Minami." I paused mid-sentence. "Me and what?" She cleared her throat delicately. "That you've been spending late nights together." I set my pen down and leaned back, expression flat. "We were working." "That's not how people interpreted it." I gave her a cold look. "Then people should stop interpreting and start performing." She nodded quickly and escaped before I could fire someone. The nerve of these people. I built a company from steel and strategy, and now I'm being reduced to office tabloid material. And the worst part? The rumors weren't completely baseless. That night I stayed late again. Not intentionally. Okay, maybe intentionally. Minami was still at his desk, surrounded by folders like a battlefield survivor. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, tie loosened, hair messy in the kind of way stylists try to recreate and fail. "Minami, do you sleep here now?" I asked, crossing my arms. He startled, blinking up. "Oh, sir. I was just finishing the market analysis." "At midnight. You said deadlines don't wait for the weak." I exhaled sharply. "That was a metaphor." He smiled faintly. "With you, sir, everything sounds like a command." I ignored the warmth that comment sparked in my chest. "You should go home. You're still here. I'm the boss. And I'm dedicated." He smiled again, tired but bright. I hated that smile. It made people forgive things they shouldn't. It made me forget who I was. The next morning, whispers followed me like perfume. "Did you hear? Minami stayed until 1 again. They say the boss gave him a ride." "No way, our boss?" "The Rio who once fired someone for breathing too loud." I nearly fired all 3 of them on the spot. At lunch, even the boardroom felt tense. James, one of the senior managers, leaned over with a smirk. "Rio, you've been quite busy lately." I raised an eyebrow. "Explain before I make you regret it." He laughed nervously. "Just saying, your assistant's name seems to come up a lot these days." "Because he's competent." "Competent, sure," he echoed, chuckling. I set my fork down slowly. "James, you seem to have a lot of free time for irrelevant conversation. Shall I fix that?" His smile died. "No, sir." "Good." I resumed eating as the table went dead silent. Control restored. Except it wasn't. Because all through lunch, I couldn't stop hearing Haru's name. Whispered, giggled, analyzed like a stock report. It irritated me more than I wanted to admit. Not because of the gossip, but because I didn't like the idea of anyone else talking about him. That night, he came into my office to drop off a file. "Sir, I heard people talking about us," he said, standing a bit stiff. I looked up. "So did I." He frowned slightly. "It doesn't bother you?" "It bothers me that people have time to gossip instead of working." "That's not what I meant." I leaned back in my chair. "Then what did you mean, Minami?" His eyes flickered down for a moment before he said, softly, "I just don't want to make things harder for you." Something in my chest tightened. "You're not." He smiled, faint but real. "Then I'll keep working hard, sir." "Do that," I said, voice steadier than I felt. He nodded, turned to leave, then paused. "You know, people only gossip about things they find interesting." I arched a brow. "Are you saying we're interesting?" He grinned. "Maybe a little." Then he left, and I sat there, staring at the door like an idiot. By Friday, the rumors had evolved. Apparently, we were now secretly dating, engaged, and expecting a golden retriever. It was absurd. And yet, when I saw Haru smiling at the front desk, I couldn't help but think, if any part of it were true, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. That thought alone scared me more than any business failure ever could. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't in control. Not of the company, not of the rumors, not even of my own heart. Chapter 10. The breaking point. There's a particular kind of silence that falls before an argument, sharp, heavy, almost electrical. I felt it in boardrooms before multimillion-dollar deals collapse. But this time it was in my office, and the trigger wasn't a CEO. It was Haru Minami. He stood in front of my desk, clutching a report like it was a lifeline. "Sir, I need to talk to you about the staff schedules." "Then talk," I said without looking up from my screen. His voice trembled slightly. "You've been pushing everyone too hard. Some of them haven't gone home in 2 days. Efficiency requires sacrifice, you know that." I replied evenly. "That's not efficiency, that's exploitation." I finally looked up. "Careful, Minami. You're one word away from insubordination." He flinched but didn't back down. "Then so be it. Someone has to say it." For a moment, I simply stared at him. This infuriating man with his soft voice and stubborn heart. Most people folded under my tone. He stood straighter. "Tell me, how do you plan to run a business on kindness? You think empathy balances the books?" I said, voice low. I think empathy keeps people human, he said quietly. Something in me snapped. People don't need kindness, Minami. They need results. You think I built this company by worrying about anyone's feelings? No, and that's why you're lonely, he said softly. The word hit like a slap. I actually froze. He realized what he said and instantly paled. Sir, I didn't mean. I stood. Get out. Rio. I said get out. His lips parted, but he obeyed, leaving the report on my desk before slipping out the door. When it closed behind him, the silence roared. Lonely. I'd been called ruthless, arrogant, even heartless, but never lonely. That word carried something heavier than any insult. I sat there for a long time, staring at the space he'd stood in, and for the first time in years, I couldn't focus on a single task. He didn't understand. None of them did. You don't become the top by being kind. You don't survive corporate warfare by worrying who's tired. You win by not feeling. And yet, there he was, constantly feeling everything, breaking rules, laughing at my orders, smiling through exhaustion. He was chaos disguised as innocence, and I was addicted to the way he unsettled me. The next day, he avoided me. Good. He should. It made things easier. Except it didn't, because suddenly the office felt quieter. The coffee tasted wrong. Even the sound of typing was dull. By lunchtime, I gave up pretending to work and walked down to the staff floor. He was there, naturally, fixing some intern's report, sleeves rolled, hair falling over his eyes. Minami, I said, tone flat. He looked up, startled. Sir, come to my office. He followed in silence, looking like he was heading to his own execution. When the door closed, I exhaled slowly. You spoke out of line yesterday. I know, and I'm sorry. He murmured. You were right. He blinked. What? I turned to face the window. About pushing people too hard. There was a pause. Then, softly, including yourself? I smirked faintly. Don't get ahead of yourself. He laughed quietly, a fragile, genuine sound that hit me straight in the chest. You're impossible, sir. I've been called worse. He hesitated. Then, are we okay? That question shouldn't have mattered, but somehow it did. Yes, we're fine, I said, turning toward him. He smiled. Relief washed over his face like sunrise after a storm. And that was it, the breaking point. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too heavy. Before I knew it, I stepped closer. He didn't move back. Minami, do you have any idea how much trouble you cause? I said quietly. His eyes lifted to meet mine. You tell me, sir. I could have walked away. Should have. But instead, I leaned in, close enough to feel his breath. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. Don't look at me like that, I murmured. Like what? Like you're not afraid of me. I'm not, he whispered. And then it happened, a brief, reckless, heat-charged kiss that neither of us had planned. It was clumsy, desperate, and utterly forbidden. When I pulled back, his lips were parted, eyes wide. Sir, forget it, that was momentum physics, I said quickly, stepping away. He blinked. What? Just get back to work. He smiled faintly. Of course, sir. And when he left, I sank into my chair, heart pounding, head spinning. So this was what losing control felt like. I hated it. And yet, for some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about doing it again. Chapter 11. The Weight of Silence. They say silence is peaceful. Whoever said that never sat in a room where guilt echoed louder than words. 3 days. That's how long it had been since I'd kissed him, or whatever that reckless, nerve-frying disaster was. 3 days since Haru stopped meeting my eyes, speaking only when necessary. The office felt wrong without his quiet chatter, his nervous laughter, or his annoyingly cheerful good morning, sir. Now it was just silence. And my thoughts. God help me. I tried convincing myself it didn't matter, that he'd move on, that I hadn't meant anything by it. But the memory was a parasite, clinging, gnawing, reminding me that for once in my meticulously controlled life, I had acted purely on impulse. And worse, I'd wanted to. Monday morning came with chaos. My assistant, the one before Haru, stumbled in pale-faced. "Sir, there's something you need to see." I raised an eyebrow. This had better involve an acquisition or a fire. "Something like that," he muttered, handing me a tablet. On the screen, a headline flashing across a business gossip site. "Rumors in the Empire. CEO Rio Cullen playing favorites with staffer?" Below it, a blurry photo. My office. Me leaning too close to Haru. Perfect. My jaw tightened. Who leaked this? We're not sure. But the board's already seen it. Of course they had. Those vultures moved faster than any journalist when blood was in the water. "Schedule an emergency meeting," I said, already calculating damage control. "Yes, sir." He scurried out. For a moment, I stared at the photo again. The angle, the timing, it could have been innocent. But anyone with eyes could see what it wasn't. The worst part? I didn't know whether I was angry at the leak or at myself for making it real. The board meeting was exactly what I expected. A parade of polished knives disguised as businessmen. "Mr. Cullen," one of them began, "you understand that favoritism, particularly of this nature, can tarnish the company's image." I leaned back, arms crossed. "So can incompetence. But I don't see any of you resigning." A few of them shifted uncomfortably. Another cleared his throat. "This is a serious matter. The staff are talking. Investors will follow." I smiled sharp, cold. "Then tell them the CEO has everything under control." They left grumbling as expected. Control. The word still had power when I said it, even if I didn't feel it anymore. Later that night, I found Haru in the archive room, working overtime again, probably trying to disappear. He froze when I entered. "Sir, why are you still here?" "I had to finish sorting these." I stepped closer. "You've been avoiding me." He hesitated. "I didn't want to make things harder." "Too late for that," I muttered. He looked up, eyes tired but steady. "They're saying things about us." "I'm aware." "Then you should fire me." The words hit harder than I expected. "Excuse me? You have a reputation to protect. You can't risk it because of me," he said softly. I stared at him. This infuriating, self-sacrificing man who'd somehow made me care about reputation less than I ever had. "You think I'd let them decide who stays in my company?" I asked. "Do you even know me?" "I thought I did, but now I'm not sure," he said, voice cracking slightly. He turned to leave, and something inside me snapped. I grabbed his wrist. "Minami." He froze. I lowered my voice. "You've been through hell to get here, haven't you?" He looked at me, startled. "How do you?" "I notice things, the late payments, the phone calls you take outside, the nights you skip meals," I said. His eyes widened. Embarrassment, shame, maybe even anger flashing through. "You think you can hide struggle from someone who's built an empire out of it? You're wrong," I said quietly. He swallowed hard. "Then why do you treat everyone like they don't matter?" The question landed like a punch. Because if I cared, I'd break. Because weakness costs. Because I forgot what compassion looks like. But I couldn't say that. So I released his wrist and said, "Because someone has to be the villain to keep the lights on." He stared at me, heartbreak in his eyes. Not anger, not hate, just disappointment. "That's not strength, Rio, that's fear," he said softly. Then he left, footsteps echoing down the hall. I stood there alone, his words circling like vultures. Fear. Was that what this was? The reason I built walls high enough to choke on the air inside them? For the first time, I didn't have an answer. I went back to my office, poured a drink, and stared out the window at the city lights. Beautiful, endless, untouchable. And all I could think was how small it felt without him in it. Chapter 12. When the king forgot his crown. There's a certain humiliation in realizing you've been the villain of your own story. I've read enough biographies to know how it happens. Power, pride, detachment. A slow corrosion masked as ambition. But reading it in theory and feeling it claw at your ribs are two very different things. Haru hasn't said a word to me since that night in the archive room. I should have been relieved, peaceful even. Yet somehow, every time he walked past me without a glance, I felt like the air itself went on strike. I didn't want to care, but I did. Against every instinct I had. Started small. I stopped barking orders in meetings. My managers looked at me like I'd been body snatched. When someone made a mistake, I didn't throw a pen across the room. I just sighed and fixed it. Even I was disturbed by the change. Then one morning, I walked into the break room. A place I'd avoided for years because it smelled like burnt coffee and defeat, and found Haru asleep at the table, head resting on his arms, surrounded by files. He looked exhausted. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep, the kind that seeps into your bones. There were faint shadows under his eyes. His phone buzzed once. A text from the doctor. I glimpsed part of the message. Test results ready. So he was still dealing with his brother's illness. Still carrying the world alone. And I'd only added to his weight. For someone who prided himself on seeing everything, I'd been spectacularly blind. I quietly made 2 coffees, one black, one with extra sugar. I remembered how he always took it sweet, said bitterness was for billionaires. When I set it beside him, he stirred, blinking awake. Rio, he mumbled, voice hoarse. Drink. You look like a corpse, I said, crossing my arms to disguise how ridiculous this felt. He blinked at the cup, then at me. You made this. Don't sound so shocked. I am capable of basic motor skills. He smiled, small, tired, but real. Thank you. I shrugged. Don't mention it. Literally. Ever. He laughed softly, and for the first time in weeks, the air around us didn't feel like a battlefield. Later that day, I caught him in the hallway, balancing a mountain of folders. Do you plan to carry those until gravity wins? I asked. I'm fine, he said, wobbling. He wasn't. Papers slipped, scattering like confetti. He froze, clearly mortified. I crouched down before he could. You're a disaster, I muttered, gathering the pages. I said I was fine, and I said you weren't. For once, try not to argue. He sighed. You don't have to. I know I want to. I cut in, standing. That shut him up. He looked up at me, expression unreadable. You're different lately. I smirked. Careful. Someone might think I'm human. Would that be such a bad thing? He asked softly. His words landed heavier than he realized. I didn't answer, couldn't. He smiled faintly and walked away, and I watched him go, wondering since when his opinion had started mattering more than the board's. That night, I stayed late at the office. It was quiet, the kind of silence I used to love. Now it just felt empty. On my desk sat the leftover coffee cup he'd forgotten. I stared at the lipstick-sized rim stain, or maybe it was sugar. Didn't matter. It was his. My phone buzzed with a message from him. Thank you again for this morning. I know it's not your job to take care of employees like that, but it meant a lot. I stared at the text for a long time, then typed back, it's not my job, but I'm learning some things are worth doing anyway. I hit send before I could change my mind. A reply came almost instantly. I'm glad. You should smile more, sir. It suits you. Smile? The absurdity of it made me laugh, quietly to myself at the sheer audacity of that man. Me, Rio Cullen, smiling. But I realized I already was. As I turned off the lights and looked out over the city, my kingdom of glass and ambition, I understood something that both comforted and terrified me. Power had never made me feel this alive. But one small, stubborn, beautiful man had. Chapter 13. When the lion learns to protect. There are moments when even kings realize the crown weighs too much. Mine didn't fall, it just started to feel smaller, like it no longer fit the man wearing it. And it all began the morning I heard them gossiping about Haru. Honestly, I don't know why Cullen keeps him. One of the senior analysts whispered near the coffee machine. He's kind, sure, but he's not one of us. Probably just pity. Another snickered. The kid's always behind on reports. Doesn't he have family problems or something? Tragic, but not exactly corporate material. My blood went cold. I'd said things like that once, sharper, crueler even. But hearing it from someone else? It was like tasting poison I'd brewed myself. I walked over, deliberately slow. Their laughter froze. Interesting conversation, I said coolly. Does gossiping increase productivity now? Or is that part of the new training program I wasn't told about? They paled. Sir, we didn't mean. Oh, I'm sure you didn't. But here's what I mean. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough to sting. If I ever hear you belittling someone who works twice as hard as you do, especially Haru, you'll be reporting to me from the mailroom. If you're lucky. Silence. Then the satisfying shuffle of shame. As they scurried off, I exhaled slowly, realizing my hands were trembling slightly. Since when did I get angry on someone else's behalf? Later that day, Haru came into my office, clutching a report. Sir, I finished the projections you asked for. Sorry it took longer. The numbers weren't matching, he said. Stop apologizing, you're not late. You're thorough. I interrupted. He blinked, caught off guard. Oh, thank you. I nodded, pretending to read the report to avoid the warmth creeping up my neck. It's good. Actually, it's better than good. His smile was small but genuine. That means a lot, especially coming from you. I snorted. From me? The office tyrant. He laughed softly. You said it, not me. That laugh. It's ridiculous how easily it dismantles every layer of my defenses. By the end of the week, I was standing in front of the board, presenting his work as the cornerstone of our new campaign. Who developed this? One of the directors asked, intrigued. I looked him dead in the eye. Haru Minaami, junior staff. The same one some of you have been conveniently overlooking. The silence that followed was delicious. The CFO frowned. You're serious? Completely. He caught an error in our cost modeling that would have cost us millions. He deserves recognition and a raise, I said. Haru, seated at the back, looked like someone had just hit pause on his breathing. When the meeting ended, he approached me outside the conference room, voice trembling. You didn't have to do that. I know, I wanted to, I replied. He swallowed, eyes glassy. Rio, thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep proving them wrong, I said, stepping closer, lowering my tone. He nodded, smiling through the emotion. I intend to. That night, I found myself lingering in my office again. The city below glittered, so many lives I'd never thought about before. It used to be simple, win, dominate, conquer. Now every victory felt incomplete unless he was part of it. I caught my reflection in the window. The same sharp suit, same impeccable tie, same man, and yet not quite. I'd started measuring success differently, not in profit margins or board votes, but in smiles, specifically his. Around midnight, I went to the common floor and found Haru still working. You're here again, I said, leaning against the doorframe. He startled, then smiled faintly. You're one to talk. I stepped closer, studying the soft light on his face. You should go home. So should you, he countered, still typing. I sighed. You're impossible. I learned from the best, he teased. I chuckled, a real one, not the polished corporate variety. Then, without thinking, I reached out and brushed a stray hair from his forehead. He froze. I did too. You should sleep, I said quietly, pulling my hand back before my own pulse betrayed me. He nodded, whispering, Good night, Rio. Hearing my name in his voice, it was disarming. Good night, Haru, I replied, softer than I intended. As I left, I realized something that both humbled and terrified me. For years, I'd ruled through fear, and yet the person who made me feel truly powerful was the one who feared nothing about me. Not my title, not my ego, not even my heart. And maybe, just maybe, that was the kind of power worth keeping. Chapter 14. The confession I swore I'd never make. There are 100 ways to control a room. Tone. Silence. Eye contact. The art of never flinching. I've mastered them all. Until Haru smiled at me this morning and said, You look tired, Rio. Are you okay? And just like that, control felt like a foreign language. It started as another Monday, the kind I used to dominate effortlessly. Meetings, presentations, signatures on papers worth millions. But every time I looked across the office, my attention drifted. Haru, sleeves rolled, hair messy, brow furrowed in focus. He was talking to a client over the phone, his voice polite yet firm. Something in me twisted. When did he start defining what a good day looked like? By noon, I gave up pretending to work. My inbox could wait. My ego, however, was growing restless. I found him in the break room, fiddling with the vending machine again. The man could crack complex data models but couldn't get a coffee cup out without chaos. He slapped the side of the machine. Why won't it? Oh, come on. I sighed. You're going to break it. He turned, startled. Rio, I wasn't, attacking company property? Really? That machine costs more than your monthly salary. I crossed my arms. He frowned. I just wanted a coffee. Then use your brain, not your fists. I stepped forward, tapped the button combination, and retrieved the drink instantly. He blinked. How did you? I'm a genius. Try to keep up. Arrogant much? He muttered, but there was that tiny smile again. Confident, I corrected, handing him the cup. There's a difference. Our fingers brushed. Just a second, but it felt like a collision. His eyes met mine, wide, curious, dangerously close. I looked away first. Pathetic. That afternoon, during a project debrief, I snapped at someone for misreporting data. My tone was cutting, my usual shield. But when I saw Haru flinch slightly, not even at me, but for the poor analyst, guilt hit sharper than any rebuke. After the meeting, he followed me. You were too harsh, he said quietly. I was honest, I replied. Honesty doesn't have to hurt. I turned to face him fully. And kindness doesn't pay the bills, Haru. He didn't back down. Maybe not, but respect keeps people from hating you. That stung. Because once upon a time, I didn't care who hated me. Now, the thought of him doing it made my chest ache. You think I'm heartless, I said. He softened. I think you're scared to be human. The silence between us stretched, heavy and electric. His words hung in the air, and something inside me finally cracked. That evening, I called him into my office. He entered hesitantly, clutching a folder. You wanted to see me, sir? Drop the sir. He frowned. Rio, what's wrong? I hesitated. The words I'd rehearsed all day suddenly tangled in my throat. My heart, the one I'd trained to stay frozen, was pounding like it wanted to revolt. Do you know what it's like, to spend your whole life winning, and then realize you never actually lived? I said. He blinked. What? I stepped closer, my voice low, rough around the edges. You've made me feel things I've spent years avoiding. Irritation, guilt, admiration, and, damn it, affection. His eyes widened. Rio, don't interrupt me. I'm already regretting this level of emotional exposure, I muttered, glaring at the floor. But I need to say it before I change my mind. I took a breath. I like you, Haru. More than I should. More than I planned to. And no, it's not because you're good or kind or hardworking. It's because you make me want to be all those things. The room went utterly silent. For once, Haru was speechless. Then he whispered, You? Like me? Obviously. I snapped, flustered. Do you think I let just anyone challenge me to my face and get away with it? His lips curved into the softest, most genuine smile I'd ever seen. You're terrible at confessing, you know that? I'm aware, so? What are you going to do about it? I muttered. He didn't answer. He stepped forward instead, closer, until I could feel the warmth of him, smell the faint scent of coffee and detergent. And then he kissed me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. It was quiet, slow, and real. I froze for half a second, then instinct overrode logic. My hand found his waist, pulling him closer. His fingers trembled against my collar as if testing whether I was real. For a man who'd mastered control his whole life, I'd never known surrender could feel like this. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing unevenly, I muttered, You do realize this is highly unprofessional. He laughed softly. Then fire me. Never, I said before I could stop myself. He grinned. Then you're stuck with me, Rio. Unfortunately, I murmured, but my smile betrayed me. That night, as he left my office, I sat there alone, fingers still tingling. For once, I didn't care about image or hierarchy. For once, I didn't feel like a king above the world. I just felt human, and it was terrifyingly, beautifully liberating. Chapter 15. The Man Who Finally Learned to Live. Morning sunlight spills across my desk. Soft, golden, annoyingly optimistic. If this were the old me, I'd have closed the blinds. No distractions. No warmth. Just efficiency. But today I let it stay. Maybe I'm getting sentimental. Or maybe I just enjoy watching it fall across the figure currently reorganizing my files without my permission. Rio, these reports are from last quarter. You can't just keep everything forever. Haru mutters, tucking his hair behind his ear. I sip my coffee. I can when it's my office. He shoots me a look. Equal parts exasperation and affection. You're impossible. I prefer the term irreplaceable. He rolls his eyes but smiles. That small, real smile that dismantles my entire personality structure. It's been 6 months since that ridiculous, terrifying, perfect night when I confessed. 6 months since I stopped pretending I didn't care. The company has changed, or maybe I have. I don't bark orders anymore. Ask. I listen. I delegate most of the time. I still terrify people occasionally, but only when it's deserved. And Haru? He's the quiet storm behind it all. The employees adore him, even the ones I used to reduce to tears. He has this way of making people want to do better, not out of fear but pride. Sometimes I catch him talking to a nervous intern, saying things like, "Mistakes are part of learning," and I think that used to be me. Except I replaced learning with termination letter. He's rewritten the culture of this place without even realizing it. Today there's a board meeting. Normally I dominate it with spreadsheets and strategy. But this time, I just watch as Haru stands in front of the senior directors, presenting the new employee wellness initiative. His voice is calm, confident, with that quiet warmth that makes even the most skeptical executive nod. Investing in people isn't charity, it's sustainability. A happy employee is a productive one. He says, the old Rio would have scoffed. Now I'm fighting not to look too proud. When he finishes, the room bursts into polite applause. The chairman glances at me and says, "Your team has done excellent work, Rio." I correct him without hesitation. Haru's team, actually. He led the entire initiative. Haru glances back at me, startled, eyes shining just slightly. That look, it hits deeper than any corporate victory ever did. After the meeting, I find him on the balcony, leaning on the railing. The city stretches below us, glittering, loud, alive. He turns when he hears me. "You didn't have to give me the credit, you know?" "I did, you earned it." He tilts his head. "You've changed." I smirk. "Don't sound so shocked. Character development happens even to villains." He laughs, soft and musical. "You were never a villain." "Oh, I was arrogant, detached, maybe even cruel. But you, I admit." Then pause, exhaling. "You taught me what it means to actually see people." He looks at me for a long moment, eyes warm, full of that quiet understanding that once infuriated me. "Do you ever regret it? Falling for someone like me?" He asks suddenly. The question catches me off guard. I step closer, closing the space between us until I can see the faint color rising in his cheeks. "No, I regret not doing it sooner." I murmur. He blinks. "You're getting good at this romance thing. Don't get used to it. I have a reputation to maintain." I say, but my voice softens. He smiles, that same shy smile that wrecked me the first time. For a long moment we just stand there. Two people who shouldn't have fit, somehow fitting perfectly. The city hums below, cars moving like veins of light. The wind catches his hair, and I can't resist. I reach out, brushing a strand from his face. "Rio," he whispers. A question, a warning, a promise. And then I kiss him. Not the desperate, chaotic kind. Not the hesitant kind from months ago. This one is calm, deep, certain. He melts into it, hands clutching my jacket, lips soft but insistent. I taste coffee, sunlight, and the kind of peace I never thought I deserved. When we finally break apart, I rest my forehead against his, breathing him in. You realize this is technically fraternization. I murmur. He chuckles. Then I guess we're both breaking the rules. I grin. I've been breaking rules my entire life. This is the first time it feels right. He smiles wide, bright, honest. You're unbelievable, Rio. And you are the reason I finally believe in something. I say quietly, later, as we walk back into the office. His hand brushing mine in a silent connection. I hear someone whisper, "Is it true the boss is dating Haru?" Apparently, and he looks happy. Happy. The word used to mean weakness to me. Now it feels like victory. That night, as we leave the building, Haru looks at me and says, "You know, you don't have to be perfect all the time." I glance down at him, smiling faintly. "I'm not. I have you." He laughs, shaking his head. "Cheesy. Effective," I counter. Then, softer, "I love you." He stops walking, staring up at me, stunned. I tilt his chin up gently. Our foreheads touch first, a quiet meeting of skin and breath. He exhales shakily, and that sound alone undoes me. Then I kiss him, slowly, deeply, like I'm learning the concept of softness for the first time. His lips part under mine, hesitant, curious, and I can taste the faint sweetness of the coffee he always drinks too late in the day. My hand slides to the back of his neck, drawing him closer, while his fingers curl into the fabric of my suit like he's afraid I'll vanish if he lets go. The world outside blurs. The noise, the city, the expectations, all dissolving into the simple, impossible fact that he's here, kissing me back. When we finally break apart, we stay close, foreheads still pressed together, breaths tangled. His cheeks are flushed, lips swollen, eyes shining in the low light. I can feel his heartbeat racing against my chest. Or maybe that's mine. And for the first time in my life, I don't think about power or image or control. Just him and the fact that somehow I finally got it right.